Okay, so I call them up. So we have people from Kibbutz Alone. I start asking around, and a woman says, "Yes, I know who you're talking about. That's Svia. Two of her children are here in the hotel." So we met the two children. They're his father's cousins' grandchildren. Then Marta reaches out to me and says, "We have somebody coming from the north to share the stories. We're not hearing the stories of the people evacuated from the north." And she tells me, and he's from Kibbutz Alon, and I speak to Yossi, and I said, "I just met my family from Kibbutz Alon. They live across the street from Yossi." So, when these things keep happening, you can't ignore them. You can't ignore them. So Yossi Levy, who you have his bio, he does security, he does all kinds of things which I don't understand. Yossi, you talk about what you do, all kinds of things, strategy things, which I don't really, which somehow wasn't exactly clear in the bio, and is taking the respite from Israel since he's evacuated from his home and his wife and 3 children, and they're now in LA. And what he is doing is telling their story and raising funds to help people survive, because they're not in the hotels forever. Then they have to find apartments, and he'll tell you the whole story of what's going on and how they had to leave their homes. And it's a beautiful area up there in the Western Galilee. Many of you have been to Rosh Hanikra, with the grottos and all along that mountain area. It's beautiful and it's cool and sometimes too cold in the winter. And it's green and it smells great, and it's just a wonderful place to live. It was, and that's what we're trying to do, is get people back to this beautiful place to live. So Yossi Levy, bavakasha, come on and share your story.
I have to? For them? Hey, everybody. Okay. Okay, so we do it as said. I don't think I have a lot to say after this introduction because she pretty much covered everything. So, thank you for coming. Before I'll start, I'll give a short, I'll say, not an introduction, but 2 disclaimers that I have. The first one is I'm not a professional speaker, and I'm not American. I have a decent English, but I'm an Israeli. So if you don't understand anything that I'm saying, bear with me, okay? Be patient. 1. 2, this story is my story. It's my family's story. It's my kibbutz story. It's a very personal story. We share our truth, our facts, and the way we live. And because it's very personal, it's also very emotional. So I usually tend to cry. I have a good 15 seconds that I cry in each lecture. If it happens, just, go with the flow. The last thing, I never planned to speak in front of people. I have stage fear, really bad one, I think. I'm trying to overcome it as I go and talk more and more. But I found myself needing to speak because, just as Rabbi just explained, I found that people have no clue what's northern evacuees and that there is such a thing. And I would constantly in the hotels sit and speak with missions and delegations. And people knew 3 things. They knew IDF, they knew Gaza and the Gaza envelope, which are the townships, kibbutzim, and moshavim surrounding Gaza. And they knew the Nova. They knew there are evacuees, but they knew that they are from the Nova. Nobody knew about the northern evacuees, which are 3 times more than the Gaza evacuees. And that's how I came to start speaking. And at some point, 3 months ago, we had the opportunity to bring our kids here for a camp for a month. And we said we gotta continue our journey. So we launched this independent, you can call it journey, you can call it advocacy, educational journey. And me and my wife and the kids, and we here, And me and my wife go across America and we talk and we speak in front of everybody who wants to educate themselves more about what's happening in a very authentic way. And that's why I'm here for. And I thank you for coming. And I thank you for watching. And we'll start. So after that, Rabbi Jamie gave a very detailed understanding about Eilon. Eilon is basically the province of Israel. It's Tuscany, it's everything combined. It's beautiful, it's green. It's in the Western Galilee. Kibbutz Eilon was founded in 1938 by Polish immigrants, followed by Holocaust survivors from Poland. There are 1,300 people in Kibbutz Eilon. It's a fairly large kibbutz in Israel sizes. There are about 408 household families, and then this number is not accurate. It's about 402 kids from babies all the way to the age of 18. Our kibbutz agriculture is pretty developed. We grow avocados, we grow bananas, we have a very large milking cow facilities, and we grow chickens. Aside from that, most of the people do work outside of the kibbutz. And a little bit about us. The family, my wife, Maor, she's a florist by profession. She owns flower shops. She's a wedding designer and coordinator. Obviously, she's out of business since October 7th. And she's also the president volunteer of our kibbutz community for the past 3 years. And she was the manager of our evacuation location in Sde Boker, where, as Jamie said, where they met their family. 3 kids, teenagers, 12, 13, and 14. As you can see, we're very persistent with having kids. We try to make it as close as possible. It worked out, and it's great. And myself, a little bit about myself. I'm 46. I served in the Army. I was a combat operative. Followed by my Army service, I worked for the Israeli security agencies in multiple positions and units. I come from the world of covert operations, undercover operations. That's what I did in my professional life, and I'm currently a business owner, and I am pretty much involved in business of security consulting in the US and other parts of the world. So I'm going to share some more geopolitical and army information during this lecture, and that's where I have the knowledge and expertise from. We lived for 15 years in the kibbutz. My wife is originally from Kibbutz Iftach, which is in the Upper Galilee, and I'm from Nahariya, which is 10 minutes from Eilon on the Mediterranean. It's the closest city. Our kids were all born in the kibbutz. And actually, this is by far the most beautiful place we could choose to live and raise our kids. What you see in this picture, as was mentioned before, this is what our life used to look like for the past 9.5 months. So you see in the picture our dining room, living room, bedroom, den, office, all our life. What you don't see in the picture is our bathroom and the hot water container to make Turkish coffee. That's the only thing you don't see in the picture. Other than that, everything is pretty much disclosed. We are a family of 5, so we had 2 attached rooms similar to that. My kids learned to live this way, and the one good thing that came out of it is that kids learn, and we also adults can learn, to go by with very little things in life, and that you can go by just fine with very little things in life. Before I touch on our story, I'll just mention that I'm not going to speak about what happened at the Gaza envelope. We all know that. We all live it. We all share the pain of it. And whatever I'm saying doesn't in any way take from what happened that day. I will share a very short story about the picture on the right-hand side of the oven. So there is this family that lives in Be'eri. This picture was taken, I took this picture, I think, around October, I want to say October 20th. I was in Be'eri then, and this picture is on the most western house in Kibbutz Be'eri, in a street called the Olive Street. All the name of the streets there are named after trees and plants and fruits. And there is this family, and the mother, it was a Saturday, so they were going for a picnic somewhere. So she was making crackers for the picnic. She gets up at 5:30, she goes, she mixes it, whatever, she puts it in the oven. She goes back up, and at 6:28, I think, she remembers that she forgot the crackers. She runs downstairs, she opens the stove, and what you don't see in the picture, there is a window here facing outside. The window kitchen is facing outside to the street, and she sees two Nukhba terrorists running in the street outside. So she immediately gets her son and her husband. They stay in the shelter, and as you can see from the picture, you see the residue of the fire, of the smoke, to be more accurate. They burned the whole house on them, pretty much. They were locked in the shelter. They shot into the shelter. The husband got 2 shots in the leg, but they all survived because she forgot the crackers. And this has been standing like that for a couple of good months after that as a very strong reminder of what it took in their case to save their lives. What people I'll say that people don't know so much is that the morning of October 7th, everything was happening down south, while in the north we were under the understanding that we are next. And we woke up in the morning, and we wake up to the picture on the TV of the white pickup of the Nukhba terrorist in Sderot shooting at the police vehicle. So immediately we jumped out of our beds, and I'm going outside, and I see that nothing is happening. And I hear silent. I don't hear drones. I don't hear helicopters. I don't hear anything. It's very disturbing when you don't hear anything, especially when we are used to hearing the drones and the Apache constantly there observing above us. We kept our kids outside that day because if we will keep them in the house, it will be odd to them. What's happening? We immediately closed their phones. We really tried to keep them low-key. They even went to bring a cake for a friend's birthday. Even that I was terrified to do that, I still decided to go with them and to do that. And we decided, as a community, pretty much people talk one to each other to stay put that day. And as the day progressed, we started to understand more and more about what's happening and how it looks bad down south. And yet, I don't know to explain myself and others why we decided to stay, but I think it was a more collective decision of us and our friends and our community. And I have my parents who live 10 minutes by, and I have my in-laws that live 200 meters away. I miss my mother-in-law so much, you can't imagine. She's so far from me now. And no, I actually do miss her. I have nobody to argue and fight with. It's boring. And we waited for the night to come. And when the night came, all I had in mind is my desire to kind of prepare the house. Now, I don't know for what. I knew from understanding what's happening down south, I'm not going to be able to fight anybody. Okay? If they come with massive. And unfortunately, we were very short on that day from a manpower perspective as well. So I geared up the house, and I placed knives everywhere. I went with the duct tape, and I just glued knife in the refrigerator, in cabinets, behind doors, everywhere that I could, just so I'll have something. And then we don't have a shelter room, a mamad, the safe rooms. Most of the houses in the kibbutzim don't have those. The old houses, they don't have that. We have an older version. It doesn't meet the standards of what's needed today. Yet, I put 2 plywoods on the walls to seal the windows, not in order to prevent somebody from coming, more to buy time. And the kids were sleeping on the 2nd floor, and I asked the kids to sleep in one room on one side. In the other bedroom across, I left the window open, and from the window, the kids could jump out to a pergola on the 2nd floor, and I put in the backyard a mattress and a futon. If we need, we jump to the futon, and the car is 10 meters away. It was fully gassed. The keys was in the ignition. We just get in, and we run away. The night passed. Nothing happened. Very long and disturbing nights. And at some point around 5:30, I went to bed, and Ma'or wakes me up. Ma'or is my wife. She wakes me up at 8, and she said, listen, we have an evacuation order. We have like 10 minutes to leave. So we had 10 minutes to leave, and this is one of the bags we left with, but it's not a special bag in any way. Yesterday in a lecture, a kid told me it's the coolest hiking bag I ever saw. I told him, I'm impressed. The thing is that we left the house with 4 backpacks. A family of 5, 4 backpacks. Each kid had to take something. We took a bag of the dog food and the dog, and we left. Now, I always used to say in the lectures that we were under the understanding that we're going to leave for 72 hours, and it's been X days, and then it's been 100 and X days, and then 200, and then 300. And now I'm already saying 72 hours turned to a year. And the thing is that in the unforeseen future, it's just going to increase. The good thing is that now we're in a better situation. Each one has a suitcase. So we made progress. Okay? The biggest problem, and that's a huge problem for her family specifically, because they, in the kibbutz group chat, constantly commentating about it, is the fact that we've been evacuated. But it's not that not only us, Eilon was evacuated. On the morning of October 8th, Israel created a 2-kilometer security perimeter inside Israel and basically granted Nasrallah and Hezbollah with a gift. We evacuated 100,000 people, out of which 22,000 kids under the age of 18. And Israel pretty much left a whole region vacant. Hezbollah immediately took advantage of it. They started to bomb all the military bases within this 2-kilometer perimeter. Between Sasa and Rosh Hanikra, there are about 4 of them, and were completely bombed. And after they were done with this destruction of military facilities, they started to just bomb for the sake of creating damage and destruction, houses and fields and agriculture as much as possible. And unfortunately, given that Lebanon has all this extensive area, and this is Syria, and this is the Mediterranean, just to kind of align you, it was very severe. Towards Israel, there has been 12,400 rockets launched in the last year. It's an average of 35 rockets per day. And these are not minor rockets. And these are the counted rockets that we can intercept, meaning that there are other rockets that we cannot intercept, like anti-tanks and things like that. So this number is even greater than the number I'm mentioning you. But with that being said, we had to move somewhere. Now, I'll explain you what it means to be an evacuee. You look at me, you say, he looks like a regular person that you can see everywhere. I'm not different from anybody else. I'm just an individual that I have, as an evacuee, you don't have control over many elements of your life. I don't receive any mail. There's no post office. I can't go and see my doctor. I don't live in my house for a year, but I need to pay my mortgage, my insurance, and my real estate taxes. And as a parent, you need to be able to constantly tell your kids and provide them with answers and some assurance where, meanwhile, I don't have any assurance for anything, pretty much. And the time progressed, and at the beginning, the kids ask where and what's next, and you don't have an answer, but you tell them, in a month from now, or in 2 months from now, we'll know. And at some point, they stop asking. And now it already flipped to the situation where they're saying that we are afraid to go back. And you have to accept that. But to be an evacuee is to be an individual that you know that you don't know. And that's something very weird to be able to understand. I've been to my house twice in the last year. I left my house as if the same situation that you left it before you came here to hear me speak. And imagine that you never go back. I actually forgot the oven working. It was working for 3 months. Think about the house infrastructures, the water, the electric, the plumbing, all that. It's things that just stands and being neglected. And the time doesn't do good to those kind of things. So we moved to the desert and we needed to make it a home. Since our kibbutz is very big, we were evacuated to 4 different locations. We had about 350 people moving with us to the desert, to Sde Boker, which is 4.5 hours south from the north. And immediately we set up this directory of people, of individuals to help with the community needs, because you need somebody to talk to the hotel, and you need somebody to help with donations, and you need somebody to help with health. You need somebody to take care of the elderly people, because we have a lady that does dialysis treatments, and she's doing it in Naharia, and we live 4 hours far. Who's going to drive her back? Who's going to drive her forth? Who's going to change the location of her treatments? We need mattresses because we have 50 soldiers among our families, and they come only in the weekend if they come. So who's going to give us mattresses? All those small things. But the biggest problem was that we had 120 kids. And those kids needed a structure. They needed some sort of something to do, because otherwise, if they don't have anything to do, we can't even concentrate on anything else. The purpose was to create for them a structure. And the second purpose was to make a situation where some of the people that still have their jobs could maintain their job and work. But you need to figure a solution for the kids. Now, you remember, we are in a hotel. There's not a lot of place. The kids can't go. There's nowhere to go. So they're all stuck with you, or you figure it out. So what we did, we opened our own independent school. We opened an independent school, and in this school, we had some of our evacuee mothers who are teachers, be the teachers. I actually volunteered to be a teacher for the whole year because they were short-staffed. We had 4 soldiers, teachers that we needed. It sounds, you won't believe what I'm saying now, but we actually needed to hire them from the army, pay for their accommodation, pay for their food and logistics in order to have them help us, which we did. But when we came to open a school, we didn't have anything. We didn't have books, we didn't have classes, we didn't have whiteboards, we didn't have anything, not a printer, not a computer, nothing. So in 10 days, we figured it out. We took from here, we took from here, there. We asked for donations. We asked for Kibbutz De Boker to give us a few rooms, which the kids were carrying chairs and tables in the morning for class, and at the end of the day, carrying back outside to a storage. And that's how it was. And I'll tell you one thing, it was beautiful. The best school year ever. And we didn't have a full educational curriculum structure for them. So we made up a lot of classes, like agriculture. They had this huge green garden, and once a week they would have salad for lunch, all of them, from their own garden. An irrigation system, one of the parents was doing that, so we asked him to teach them. Dog training, 2 Bedouin volunteers that came once a week and taught the kids, when you are in the desert, which plants you can use, which plant you can't, what's poison, what's good for tea, and what's good for cooking, all those kind of things. We had a weekly baking session and a cooking session for the kids. Business entrepreneurship, leadership, photography, whatever we could, we provided. The purpose was to give the kids a place to go in the morning and to be happy when they return. While we were doing that, up north, the situation escalates. And I sit in front of people down south, and people have no clue that this is what's happening. People sit with me, and they think that I'm a southern evacuee from the Gaza envelope. They don't understand that there are northern evacuees. And that's our banana plantations that were burnt. And you need to remember, as I told you before, Hezbollah, at a very early stage, created damage for the sake of damaging. There is over 300,000 acres of land that was burnt in the north alone. Okay? A lot of fires, and the first responders, and her second cousin is actually in the first responders in our kibbutz. And that's actually my office that was direct hit by a drone. So it's been sitting like that since April with nothing. And you can't pretty much do anything about it as well. And don't ask me about the compensation, because it will just get us all more upset. So you can understand from that what it looks like. But this is the situation. This is how it's been since. And now we are starting our second school year, and we don't know what September is going to look like. But you need to keep in mind that, and we'll touch more about it soon, I'll get to it. And in between all of that, we have the kids. And, you know, for the kids, by the way, personally, and I have 3 of them, I think they are much better human beings. And we're trying to take this lemon and make of it the best lemonade we possibly can for those kids. And I think that since they are constantly around people and constantly around other kids, and that you don't have the ability to not be there. You just don't have that leverage. You can't sit in the hotel room all day. They became better human beings, much more understanding and compelling, and understanding each other and wanting to be better. And at the end, I think it's a much strong and resilient generation of kids that we're growing. That's my personal opinion. But, you know, I'll zoom out, and it's a very steep zoom out from our little situation, and I'll give you a short understanding as to our neighbors. Oh, I did forget to mention one thing. Her other second cousin, she actually gave birth in a hotel room. Imagine having a baby, and from the hotel, you return to a hotel room. But again, when you have community, so we take care of everything. we bring you everything. You get whatever you need, but still, you're returning with a baby from the hospital to a hotel room for another good couple of months. And every time she would used to come to the breakfast dining room with the baby, I told her, if he's crying, move to that table. I have teenagers, I don't want to hear him crying. And then she used to put the stroller right next to me. And I couldn't tell her no. And if I would have told her something, my wife would give me the look. So, you don't want to upset your wife. So that's about it. So let's talk about our very disturbing, ludicrous neighborhood we live in. And I'm not going to go by any specific order. I'll start with our so-called peace countries. I'll start with the Egyptians. We have a lot of conflict with them. We don't see eye to eye regarding many things. We don't see eye to eye regarding how and what do we do with Rafah crossing. We don't see eye to eye regarding their borders. I'm sure you all know, and if you don't know, they have actually increased their level of fencing, gates, and security measures in their border with Gaza. So God forbid, none of their Palestinian brothers and sisters will accidentally find themselves in Egypt. They don't want them there. They're trying to do everything to make sure that they won't get there. They were very hesitant to have Israel control the Rafah crossing, but the Rafah crossing, since Israel controlled it, actually what happened is that the Palestinians in Gaza received all the humanitarian aid, while when Hamas was controlling the crossing, they were taxing the people for water and rice. They made a fortune, and people could not buy it. They just took all the aid. What people also don't know is that as long as they're saying that Israel does not provide enough humanitarian aid, even until the day before this war started, Israel gave to Gaza 600 trucks per day with humanitarian aid before the war through Karni crossing. Just for people to know, that same crossing that they killed everybody and burned it on our soldiers. We don't see eye to eye with the Egyptians regarding the security aerial coalition that's supposed to provide Israel with the protection against Iran. They actually withdrew from this coalition. Whatever they do because they have much more broader interest with the U.S. administration, which at the end, as we all know, it's money. And they have financial interests with them. They need their support. So they do whatever Israel asks, but they do it, without really wanting to, in a sense. In 2017, we actually asked the Egyptians to flood about 7 huge tunnels from Egypt to Gaza that used to transport ammunition, drugs, money. They did that, and as the war progressed, we asked them to create some sort of a huge extended hall, I don't know how to say it like to dig a huge hole, very long, as if you want to dig and put some sort of a foundation all across the border. Just if there are any additional tunnels, they will be exposed. They did that as well. But other than that, they're okay. Hamas. Let's talk about Hamas for a quick second. Without getting too much into there's no excuses to the lack of army presence on October 7th. And we're not going to get into why it happened, because obviously I don't know to answer that. I can give assumptions, but it's not some people who will know or who've been involved, they will have to, at some point, hopefully, have the accountability for that. But I will say that Hamas, you got to give it to them. They did something remarkable from their perspective. What's remarkable about what they did is that they were able to very quickly dismantle our security concept that was very steady for the past 50 years. And this concept has two major fundamentals. The first is the fact that we have our deterrence all over the Middle East, and people knew not to deal with us. The second component to it is the fact that this happened exactly 50 years after Yom Kippur, when we were last surprised. And they had the element of surprise, which we always had the element of surprise. And with Hamas, we lost it. Hamas is a cruel, vicious terror organization. They have zero appreciation for human life, even their own. They do not mourn their soldiers or their commanders. They do not pay tribute to them when they die. They do not even mention it publicly when they die. If you will look back, you'll see that most of the confirmations for people that were assassinated or eliminated came from other sources, and Hamas never publicly expressed that. So that's with regard to that, and I'll touch more about them later. The Jordanians. The Jordanians are, again, we have peace with them. It's a very tricky border. It's a tricky border because there's barely any physical border between us and Jordan. Jordan has 72% majority of Arab Palestinians. They are similar to their brothers in Gaza. But again, also Jordan, they don't want the Gaza people, their Palestinian brothers, to come and live with them in peace and prosperity in Jordan. Jordan, the location of Jordan is problematic because it's very close to Israeli population. It's very close to the West Bank. It's very close to Judah and Samaria. It's very close to the Jordan Valley. So for us, it's, yes, we are in peace with them. Yes, they are part of our aerial coalition. Yes, they participated last week in defending Israel against the Iranian missiles, but it was actually Americans who did that from their sovereignty. It wasn't purely Jordanian. The biggest problem is that Iran is a tunnel for money, drugs, and ammunition to the West Bank. And that's a very, very, very strategical problem for Israel. Syria, on the northeast side, well, Syria, they are not involved in the war. Whoever is attacking from Syria will be pretty much Iranian militias that are sitting in Syria, Hezbollah militias that sit in Syria. But Syria, on the other hand, they don't do anything to stop anything. Obviously, they have no interest. They don't love us all of a sudden. And they will give their airspace and their land to everybody and anybody who has bad intention and desire to hurt us. Behind all that, we have Iran. Iran is the head of the snake, and they have developed a very lethal weapon belt all around Israel, from the north with Hezbollah, Syria, Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen. They're all over the place. Judah and Samaria, Hamas. It's a whole belt surrounding us. Lucky we have some shore frontage. But it's funny to think that just 45 years ago, they were our most closest Muslim allies in the region. It's kind of crazy to think about that. They have made billions in the last 4 or 5 years by selling and becoming very close and tied with both Russians and the Chinese. The Chinese buy oil worth about $25 billion a year from the Iranian, and they are our end goal. In order to have some sort of a change in this region, we will need to take care of them at some point. I will touch about the Saudis and the UAE, and I will say that they have much bigger interest in being supportive of us. They have an interest because they have bigger interest with the US. And unlike their neighbors, which also like money, they love money, and they see Israel as a bridge for Europe, for financing, investment, technologies, agriculture. So they see, as opposed to the other neighbors, the value in coming to sort of an agreement, a peace agreement, a trade agreement with Israel. They will not proceed with that in the foreseen future due to two things. First of all, they're still an Arab country. They can't do that to their brother, the Arab brothers. So they will not do that during the war. And they will like to see some sort of I won't say two-state solution, I will say an agreement with the Palestinians and the West Bank. And it's not going to happen anytime in the foreseen future. But they are a very strong component of our coalition because our enemies are their enemies. So, sometimes when you have a common enemy, it's more stronger than to have an ally in that sense. Lastly, I'm going to touch about Hezbollah. Because Hezbollah is my problem. Hezbollah is the reason I'm not home. Hezbollah, or as they call themselves, the God people or the God party in the sense of a political movement party. They like to call themselves El Muqawma, which is the resistance. They are a very radical, brutal movement. They hate Jews, they hate Christians, they hate modernism, they hate liberalism. They are very, very extreme, fundamental organization, fully sponsored and funded by Iran. And our problem is that, first of all, they don't treat themselves as a terror organization. They treat themselves as an army. They train like an army. They are managed like an army. If you will look at the Hezbollah structure, you will see that it's pretty much identical to the IDF structure. When they have somebody killed, they pronounce it. They mourn it, and they pay the respect. Just like when we have a soldier that dies, we name him, and we show his picture, and we pay respect to that. They are doing the same, and they are adding a very interesting sentence. They will mention his name, and then they will mention another soldier died on our way to Jerusalem. The problem is that as an organization, they do not seek a land. They don't look for the state of Hezbollah. They seek for the annihilation of Israel. And that means that we're going to have a bigger problem because they don't intend to stop at any time. Now, it became a problem because in 2006, the UN Resolution 1701, after the Second Lebanese War, withdrew Lebanon past the Litani River. As the year progressed, they constantly shrank this distance, this 9-kilometer distance, and back in 2022, they were already sitting on the fence on the Israeli side. And then they were very provocative, and they placed tents, and then they built observation pole on the border. And the UN can't stop them. Or you know what, I'll say, I don't know if the UN wants to stop them. they for sure are not any force that is effective to them or that they feel hesitant to act because of them. And that's how, as the time progressed, it shrank and shrank and shrank, and now they're again on our borders. Now, for the past year, nobody paid attention to the north. Everybody were concentrated in Gaza. And then we were concentrating on the Iranian. And from time to time, the Houthim wanted to say hi and launched a couple of drones, or the Iraqi militias. And then 3 weeks ago, there was a change in a paradigm. And that change was the result of the beeper explosions. So let's talk about the beeper for a second, because it will give you a very good understanding of what actually happened. So I'll start with the spoiler. The beeper was a mistake. The beeper was not it was an intentional act. But if it was up to us, I'm not sure that Israel would have chosen to use it and utilize it when they did. There was a fear in Israel that some of that this program, I'll call it a program, that's been taken for a couple of very good years, was in a sense compromised. There were a couple of individuals that Israel knew or assumed that they are within the group of very minimum people that think that there's something wrong with that component. We eliminated those individuals, but yet we decided not to lose this tool. Now, how can you know that we didn't plan to use it when we used it? Just because after that, we didn't take immediate advantage of having 4,500 people dismantled and not functioning. And we didn't take immediately the intention of using that and using the upper hand. It took us a day or two, and then Israel started to express much more intensive strength and force in the north. And I think that if you want to know or look just how much knowledgeable we are from an intelligent perspective up north, you can see our access and our knowledge and the depth of the information and intelligence we have on this organization that was built through years, well, both with SIGINT intel measures and with human intel measures, and we basically went to bed with their leadership and woke up with them in the morning. In 2006, on the Second Lebanese War, Israel eliminated just one senior commander. This time around, their commander structure has the upper jihadi command, which are 4 individuals. None of them is alive. And then there is the second layer, which is about 15 people. They have maybe 2 left. You can see that they can't find somebody to take over. Nobody wants. They all want to all of a sudden to go to Iran to learn more about the Islam and become teachers. How convenient. How convenient. So, and this is a tool that we have, and we are now very much expressing this force. But with that being said, it doesn't necessarily return us home faster. It's a good thing that's happening. But the question is what's going to happen the day after. Some more pictures. Before I conclude, I want to talk a little bit about this picture, because this picture is, in essence, it's what's happening in Israel. We have our closest ally, the United States, and we have a conflict, a constant conflict of interest. America is seeking de-escalation, while We are constantly being bombed. We are managing a war against 7 different frontiers. And the Americans asking us to be more hesitant or to, it's like as if somebody spit on you and he tells you that it's rain. So just don't do anything. And I always ask my American friends if a city in America will be bombed by Mexico, what will happen to Mexico the morning after? And I can imagine it will turn into a parking lot. And nobody disagrees. So why, if it comes to us, it should be anyway different? So I think that the problem for the US is not from Israel perspective, because from a military standpoint, we will get the support. We will get the funding. Honestly, it's also not pretty much relevant who is in office, just because these are budgets that are already set for a couple of years ahead. I can tell you that they have been doubled. So that's not a problem. I think it's a problem because our region, all the Middle East, they don't see that there is a big boss around. And they don't see that America has the upper hand and that they are there and they are expressing their presence in a way that will help them gain support from other Arab countries. And that's something that is missing from my perspective. The best thing that the US did during this war is that Israel joined the Middle East CENTCOM command. Until now, Israel was a part of the European command, and the CENTCOM command is the more Middle Eastern regional command. It's good in multiple layers. The 3 major one is it's good because it's increasing the support and the constant work relations, military, politically, okay, and obviously with funding. Now, with that being said, why do I constantly say that it doesn't necessarily bring me home faster? So, first of all, on both in Gaza and in the north, we can identify this country that will step in and say, you know what? If you retrieve and we do an agreement, we're going to take over. The UN proven to be not effective. Will America be there? I don't know. The French, the Germans, the British, I don't know who will volunteer to be that guard dog to watch. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Israel is now in a phase that it's called CBW. We are in combative between war, because there's no war now. We had a war in Gaza. The war in Gaza ended in March. The 1st of March, Israel withdrew a massive amount of force. We are maintaining military presence on both of our frontiers. But there are very, very limited amount of countries in this world who can last a very long time war. We can't take it anymore. We can't take it because socially it kills us. We don't have the manpower for that. We don't have the resilience of the population for that, and we don't have the funding to afford it. Not from a military perspective, from a civil perspective. And this situation is not healthy for us. With that being said, if you ask my personal opinion, there are 3 major problems we need to solve in order to start to think about a better next day. The number 1 and the most crucial is the return of the hostages. The return of the hostages, it's like a stitch for a wounded scar that we have. We need it for the people. We need it for our moral. We need it for our social strength. We are a nation under PTSD. You can be in Tel Aviv now and people as if they go about their life, but everybody is so sick from it. That's number one. Number two is Hezbollah. Hezbollah is an imminent threat. It was like this for years. We didn't help them become the monster that they are, but we need to take them back 100 years, and we're doing that. And the last component is Judah and Samaria. Judah and Samaria is a big problem for Israel because it's in the heart of Israel. And at the end, we had 180 rockets from Iran, and we had 7 people died from a lonely terrorist who came from Judah and Samaria. And that's like a cancer in our body that we need to solve. Now, how it all affects the northern people? Well, at the end, we are a very low number of people. We're less than 1% of the population. We're less than 3 mandates in our political demographic map. But we need to find a way to return home. And if I need to finalize, I will just say that, you know, it's, there's a lot of bad things, but there's a lot of good things. You see the unity of the civil population. You see how people help each other. You see how people are there for each other. You see the volunteer of the people. We have a problem with our administration, but that's a different conversation. But I think that for our kids and for our younger generation, this country is leading by example of how we expect adults to act and behave and be there for each other. And if I need to conclude, I will say that this is from Kibbutz Eilon. This picture was taken the day before I flew here on July 6th, I'm sorry. And I promised my kids, my parents, my in-laws, that I will do everything in my limited abilities and power to have us go back there. I don't know when it's going to happen, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but I got to do everything in my power, and that's to speak and to share and make people more educated about our situation. And I thank you for your time. And I'll always conclude with this, because this is really the most important thing, okay? So if you have any questions, please. Yes. Yes, thank you. So I have there some materials, and these materials are divided to two. I have a picture of a lady from the Gaza envelope that is a part of our community and live with us nowadays. She's an artist. She has her own jewelry shop and a gallery. And for the past 3 years, she has not been practicing her art and craft since she lost her husband. And she has 3 kids. And she's a part of our community now, and because she doesn't feel safe enough to return to the Gaza envelope. And I kindly asked her at the beginning of the war to do some drawings so we could share when we go around and we speak for people to buy. And she was just not willing to do that. And before I came here in June, I asked her again, and she was willing to do that. And now I'm happy to say that she's actually she actually became a part of our staff and teachers, and she teaches art, our elementary school kids, which is beautiful. So if people find it interesting, please, it goes directly to her and her family. And on the other table, you have some materials about me, about us as a family and what we're doing, and some of our aid and need. If to be specific, I'm raising money now in order to buy our kibbutz. We need 5 mobile armor shelters for our farmers, because I don't know if you know, a milking cow, if you don't milk it in 48 hours, it will die. So our people are short-staffed and they are constantly working, but they don't have any shelter. If they're working the bananas or the avocados, they don't have any shelter. That's our first, the main problem. So we are raising money for 5 of those. And the other thing that we're raising money for is 3 mobile firefighters tankers, small tankers, portable, that can be attached to any pickup. Because by the time that the fire department reaches our land, we already have acres over acres that are burnt. And if there are rockets, obviously they can't reach us. So we need to have something more accessible and that is present in our fields constantly. So these are like the major things that we're trying to raise money for. You can do it through Venmo. There is a bank account on the paperwork there. Or if you want, I know that you guys have a discretionary fund as well. So you have options if that's something you have interested in. And regardless, if you have any other questions, please. They live in the kibbutz. They live in the kibbutz. Now it's a closed military area with army restriction, and yet they still stay there and they live there. They are about a quarter of the manpower that they usually are, and they work in like 12 to 14-hour shifts. But they are very, very short-staffed, but they have to constantly work. So I'm 46. We never lived in peace with our neighbors, and we had a good life. And Kibbutz Eilon is on the border, yet our kids go all out and about, and we had the best of life with having our enemies around. But the problem is that October 7th kind of opened our eyes to understanding that maybe this is not an option anymore. Because if we always had the mindset of something can happen, well, you know it can happen, yet you go about your life. Now you can't, we won't settle for that because we saw what the nightmare looks like. We saw people being slaughtered, and you cannot, it's something that's in the back of my mind. When I think about going back home, that's something that I need to think about for myself and for my kids. Now, to tell you if there's going to be peace, listen, we have enemies that they don't seek peace. I don't think it's a let's make peace. I would love to go to Lebanon. I think it's a beautiful country. I don't see it happening in my lifetime, not with a lot of any of my other neighbors. As long as we have the head of the snake, as long as we have the Iranians who are constantly supporting hatred and the annihilation and destruction for us, peace is a problem. Again, I don't necessarily have the answer to that. I can tell you that for me, even without having peace, we had a good life there. And I think that this is what people got used to. Not necessarily what they would want now and what they will settle for now. On the other hand, ask people if they want to have peace with some of our neighbors. They don't want that as well because they want to slaughter us. Why we want peace with them? We maybe do need to eliminate them. So it's tricky. I don't know to give you a real definitive answer to that. Yeah, yeah. I told you it's a complex neighborhood. There's no figuring out. It's just you have to really go between the waves. Yeah, well, every Israeli has like a couple different opinions. It depends what day of the week you are not what? No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Any other questions? Saudis, yes.
Was that what precipitated possibility that
No, I think that, first of all, the U.S. has a very strong interest in that. I will say that Israel and the Saudis, they have unofficial business doing for many years. It's, again, it's a common interest for both parties, for us and for them. It only did good with Dubai and with the Emirates. The commerce that is the fruit of this labor with the Abraham Accords is very positive. I hope we will reach that target. I think that now, given October 7th, and not because of how we responded to October 7th by initiating a war, I think that because now it's not the timing, and the Saudis, even that I'm sure that the U.S. administration would love to have a disagreement tomorrow before the election, it's not going to happen anytime soon, just honestly because of what we are constantly doing now, which we have to do, and that comes before that. We would like maybe to do that in parallel, but we have to understand them, the Saudis, why they will not be willing to do that. And for the Israeli people to come from an Israeli administration and leadership and to come and say, let's go for a two-state solution now, I don't think that the public opinion will be in favor of that in Israel. Something really broke in the Israelis after October 7th. Thank you. Thank you.